Good evening, dear brothers and sisters. Today is Labor Day, and today the church celebrates Saint Joseph, the workman. You know, my notion of Saint Joseph is that of an all-around handyman, a favorite of homeowners who know the big challenge of maintaining things. Wouldn't you want to have a guest in your house who's very handy with little repairs and who would volunteer to do it for free? I think Jesus was that kind of man because he was raised by a handyman or a father. I have always been fascinated by people who can fix broken things. People who are very handy when it comes to doing repair jobs on things that do not seem to work anymore, who can make them function all over again. In the eyes of people, the woman whom Joseph loved, Mama Mary, was no different from damaged goods or rejects in a store for quality products. And yet Joseph saw God's hand in the turn of events. And he allowed himself to be guided and to get involved in God's plan. You see what kind of characters God chooses in his work of salvation. Handyman like Joseph. The opposite of handyman, or the opposite of the handyman type, are the wasteful characters whose attitudes are conditioned by what Pope Francis calls the throwaway culture. They are probably the type who, because they have too much money, they can decide very quickly to dispose of things because they can afford to get rid of them anyway and buy new ones. Well, good thing if it is just things that they dispose of. Sometimes they also do it on people, as though people were no different from things. Well, we actually have a prototype of that in today's first reading. A man called Saul of Tarsus. He looked at Christians as defective beings, as liabilities to society. And he thought that we, his people, should be eliminated or disposed of like pests. Well, perhaps because Jesus was himself the son of a handyman, he would recycle this man later into a new person. Still the same, but at the same time, totally different. From an arrogant and murderous persecutor of Christians named Saul, he would be recycled to a humble and faithful propagator of the Christian faith, and this time renamed Paul, from Saul to Paul. He had to experience a fall in order to rise again into a new person. He had to be blinded first before he could see again, and this time see the light of Christ. The young Saul must have been the perfectionist type, a kind of man who thought very highly of himself. He could not tolerate anything that he considered as flawed. Perfectionists can be dangerous people too, you know, especially when they force their criteria of perfection on all other people, very much like the mythological character called Procrustes. I don't know if you've ever heard of that character in Greek mythology called Procrustes. He was supposed to be a manufacturer of beds, a bed maker. Pero may diferensya. Because you have to fit his bed. First, he would make the bed. And then, if there are orders, the prospective client has to fit his bed. If you are too big for his bed, you would have to be cut to size. If you are too short for his bed, then you would have to be stretched to fit his bed. Of course, it's mythology. But we know what that means. And how sometimes people have that kind of a Procrustean attitude. Well, the good news is that is not how God works. God's objective is always to create, not just to fabricate, to give life. To give life, as we keep hearing in the gospel, on the bread of life. To allow things to grow into what they can be, each in accordance to its own nature. Since God meant us, human beings, to be His own image and likeness, God created us, not just to become creatures, but to become co-creators. That's why human beings are very creative. The other day, I heard in the news report that because of the lockdown, because of an immobilized market, farmers now in Europe have become so badly affected, they find it more advantageous to dump their milk and destroy their agricultural products than to sell it because nobody's buying it. Overproduction. Could it be that God has allowed this pandemic so that we can just stop for a while and think how much of our human activities are still truly creative and how much of them have become destructive? Maybe this is a time for us to rethink our human activities, to reassess our overproduction, our overproducing and rather wasteful industries and enterprises. Do we even see anything wrong when workers are treated like objects? Or when they can simply be replaced by robots? When labor is commodified? When profit becomes the main objective? When human activities become dehumanizing? Or when work is no longer about making a living, but just about making money? All right, we build, and build. But do we even care to ask what we are building for and who we build for? Remember what happened when the people built the Tower of Babel in the book of Genesis. You remember how God looked down from heaven and saw the people united around a project He did not approve of because it was meant only to promote human pride, human arrogance and egoism. So what did God decide to do with these people who were united? He dispersed them. Sometimes, when our human activities are going wayward already, what is built has to be destroyed in order to start all over again. You know, crisis situations can come as a call for new judgment, or what people, in the world of information technology would call reconfiguration. Look, Jesus had to strike down Saul in order to recreate him into Paul, the person he really was called by God to be. I myself, I'm already looking forward with excitement at the new things. Many, many decades ago, there was a pope who wrote about new things and entitled his encyclical Rerum Novarum. I wish Pope Francis would come up with a new version of Rerum Novarum in a post-COVID situation. I am already looking forward with excitement to the new things that will come about because of the crisis that we are going through. Brothers and sisters, may we not waste the opportunity to restore human labor to its proper dignity and the nobility of its purpose.